Welcome to Waffles Friends Work, a values-driven leadership and personal development podcast. I'm Kara.
And I'm Jensie. We hope you find this podcast both thought-provoking and entertaining as we cover how we all show up for ourselves, in our relationships, and at work.
Since we're only moderately obsessed with shows like Parks and Recreation and Brooklyn Nine-Nine,
And can't stop reading material from Brene Brown and Adam Grant,
you'll get a mix of approaches to thinking about and becoming the person you want to be.
yeah, that's enough. Let's do it.
Hi, welcome back to Waffles Friends Work. We are here today to talk a little bit about the crossroads that we experience in our lives and how we can use values as our compass to navigate those spaces. This is a topic we keep coming back to because it means so much to us, and it has been such a compass and guiding force for us in our lives. And we think everyone should have this tool and know how to do it and how to use it to navigate those tricky transitions in our lives.
Yeah, I think we would all get a lot further in those transitions and maybe have a lot less anxiety and angst about navigating those if we could come back to ourselves and understand what our values are, and let that sort of be the guide in making those choices and decisions. Because I don't know about y'all, but I am an overthinker, so I will just keep going and spin out without a lot of direction. And if I keep my values in mind and I come back to those, often the answer becomes really clear.
Yeah, and then you're like, ugh, why did I think so much about it? Why did I make this so much harder than I needed to?
Because we love to overthink and we love to overcomplicate, because we have these big, beautiful brains that have taken us past those animal basic instincts into, I don't know, just anxiety, really. That's what we got out of it.
Yeah, and decision making in general just seems to get harder. We want everybody's opinion, and now we have to Google everything, and there's so much information available, and you want to make sure you have all of it, and really, like all of these things, when really it can be as simple as what feels the most right. Well, what does that mean, and what does that look like for you? Well, I can't tell you.
Yeah, that's the hard part for us.
I can't tell you what they are, but I can tell you how to figure it out.
Yeah, I was going to say, we can barely do it for ourselves. So no, I cannot help you with what that actually looks like for you. But what we wanted to talk about today was some specific examples of some of the crossroads that we have come across in our lives that either having values helped us get through, or what we wish we had known then, because it's taken us a while to get this wise and so smart about articulating values and how important they are.
And now we are so wise and so smart.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've had a really interesting experience over the last couple of months as I feel like I'm closing the divorce chapter. I know I talked about it quite a bit in our first season, and it has been a road and a journey to really feel like I have healed and closing that chapter. And it's only taken 4 years. So here we are, which I think is pretty good. I don't know.
That's fair. I think that's very fair. That, especially for how long you were married and how much, especially in your formative adult years, like there's a lot to unpack there.
Think about how long we were married. We were married for a long time. But what has been coming up is, since I am no longer so triggered by being around or seeing my ex-spouse, it has really become very, very clear how different our values are. And since we are not in this messy middle of the divorce or even the messy middle of marriage, it has become just really clear about where we differ in what we value in our goals and what we want to achieve and what matters most to us. And looking back on that, regardless of everything that happened, I don't know how long this would have lasted, because the longer we go after being divorced, the more I see that gap. And I think it's even widening. The more I become myself and the more I understand that and the more I come back to myself, the wider that gap gets. So it's been really interesting to look back on that and think about what could we have done differently, which I'm not exactly sure, because we got married so young. And so you don't even have that conversation.
Young.
I don't think it's not very intentional when you are just really young. And there are a lot of assumptions that we made about each other and about our growth and about what we wanted, a lot of unspoken expectations. And if I could give any advice to anybody getting married or dating or seeking out a long-term relationship, it would be to have that conversation about what you value and what does that mean and what does that look like. And what is that going to look like if you have children, or what that looks like in the future? Because I know we can't predict everything. We really can't. And it's a lost cause to try to do that. But to have that conversation, you kind of autopilot of these values that you've just been carrying around with you. And if you take the moment to have that conversation with this significant other and even with yourself. What do we want to leave? What matters most to us and what's not serving us anymore? I think can go a really long way. First of all, building that relationship and building closeness in that relationship because you have this united understanding. But then looking ahead to the future and seeing where things might diverge in the future.
Yeah, and having that conversation paves the foundation to open that door and have that conversation again, because you won't be the same people, especially if you're like us and get married in your early 20s. Like, you're not going
Yeah,
to be the
there's no
same
way.
people, but having that conversation gives you some groundwork and some foundation to revisit and be like, okay, this is what this looks like for me now, and this is how I'm feeling about things. And like a lot of assumptions and unspoken thoughts and understandings that you thought you had of each other. And I think that is a common experience for people who may on the surface have a lot of things in common. Maybe you grew up with a shared religion, or you affiliate with a similar political party, or grew up in the same small town, something that you feel like would create a shared sense of values, but in actuality, it still is going to look different from person to person. I talk about this a lot. My husband and I grew up in incredibly similar contexts, big families, lots of kids, very religious, like very similar contexts. And we are very different people who value different things. Those values are complementary and we're working towards similar things, but it's still very, very different. And I think that's a common mistake, especially when you're so young getting married as a little baby that you're like, you think you know how the world works, and you think that because this is something that's so important to you, it's also important to them. And it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, you take a lot for granted. I actually had an interesting conversation this weekend with a woman who was telling me that she was afraid to figure out what her values were and have her husband do the same thing because she was so worried that they would have such different values. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Like you said, they can be complementary in ways that even though you don't value the exact same thing or it doesn't come out the exact same way, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not compatible. It just means that you understand at a deeper level each other and where you're coming from and why those things might look differently.
Yeah, I think for me, the harder thing would be if one of you really values knowing what your values are and going for them and having them and working toward them, and someone who's just not interested in learning that about themselves or about you. That I think that would be harder than someone who also has done the work to learn their values and then they're just different.
Right, right. Yeah, that sets up a whole different sort of landscape for a relationship. I'm just not really interested in learning about myself or getting better or feeling more authentic in who I am.
Yeah.
And I guess that's
and maybe that's something I found you.
fair, but that would be really hard for me. I'd be like, what? I don't think this is going to work.
That is something I do value. So that would be a values mismatch probably. If I could just poke a little, we talked a little bit about we have these moments in our lives where either we feel like the rug got pulled out from under us, or we're in a really big transition, whether we chose the transition or not, and we feel like we're kind of free falling a little bit. And we've talked about that a little bit in regards to your divorce. And I'm just curious how values anchored you through that turbulence as you were navigating a new space and a new life.
I think that's a good question. And honestly, looking back, it wasn't as concrete or as defined then, right? Because I hadn't really thought too much about I knew what I valued, but I didn't really have it articulated. So I think what kept me grounded through that process was really putting my kids first. That was the thing that kept me grounded and pegged to the ground and really informed a lot of my decisions, how I reacted, how I behaved, the things that I really prioritized through the process as far as going through the mediation and what's in this marriage divorce decree and how do I cooperate with this person, and all of the things and decisions that I made really came back to how I wanted to show up for my kids, which, funny enough, is actually one of my values, right? Is showing up. And so it all goes back to that. But at the time, it wasn't defined that way, but it really was about them, showing up for them. How do I show up as myself in a way that shows up for them that feels authentic? So not hiding the pain, not hiding how much it hurt, not hiding from them, not making it fake or inauthentic in any way, but really prioritizing showing up for them in a way that made me feel comfortable in the whole situation, which is kind of a weird, seems almost selfish, but it wasn't selfish. It was about how can I do this in a way that is sustainable for me and doesn't lead to feeling resentful or whatever. I'm as surprised as anybody that I came through it like that. But I do want to give myself some credit. I did a good job and my kids really survived some turbulent stuff with, I like to think, minimal damage, but they'll probably have to talk about it in therapy later anyway.
And something you've done is prepare them with therapists that they can they can unpack that with later.
And then I go to therapy so that I can show and demonstrate to them that it's not scary or bad, and we can
Yeah.
all use a little bit of outside help. So, yeah, I guess it did come back to one of my values. It just wasn't really articulated the way that it is now, but I guess some things just don't change. I liked what you said about, I feel like we have made choices, or like the rug is being pulled out from under us, because there are transitions that we are choosing, right?
Mhm.
We are choosing, hopefully, we're choosing to get married, and that's not being forced upon us. We are choosing to move to a new city, sometimes not, but there are these transitions where we choose, and there are other times that we don't choose. My divorce was definitely not one that I thought was coming, but like I said, I don't know how long it would have lasted down the road. But you have also experienced sort of a transition that came unexpectedly.
A rug pull for sure. It was not getting divorced, but with how married I was to my job, it might no, that's terrible. That's terrible. I shouldn't diminish your experience like that. No,
No, it's funny. I like it. It's true though. You were married to that job.
I was married to that job. It really felt like getting dumped. It was the closest thing I could explain getting laid off from that job. And it's funny because I like to think that I had gone through this value setting process and I knew exactly, and it's still just like it ripped it out from under me. And I went through a little bit of like an identity crisis. I didn't realize how much worth and value I tied to that job until I didn't have it anymore. I was like, I've got healthy work-life boundaries and I don't check my emails after 5, so I must have it figured out, and didn't realize how much I was tying a lot more of myself to that. And yeah, that was a transition I did not want and would not have asked for at all.
Oh boy. Yeah, so how did we get here? How did you navigate through that?
Well, first of all, I was really sad. I don't want to pretend that I was like sunshine, daisies, it's okay. My
No,
values will
I
keep
have
me
to say, like,
grounded.
I mean, I have known you for a long, long time, obviously, your whole life.
Literally 35 years. Okay.
And I don't think that I have ever seen you so bummed out.
Yeah.
That was the big one.
It was a bummer. And I'm almost embarrassed about it now because like your job should never be that whatever. But I was really, really sad. And so part of it was just letting myself feel that. I also felt a lot of shame and embarrassment. So many people were getting laid off and I got laid off in a huge chunk. And so there were so many people going through the experience with me and I cocooned. I didn't want to talk. I was so embarrassed and I was so grateful for the 4 people who reached out to me that were in the same boat and were like, I'm sad too. Like this sucks. And finding some people to go through it with, which now that I'm saying this out loud, one of my core values is connection. And I felt like going through this experience disconnected me from a lot of the things that I loved and the people that I loved, but finding the people who were either going through it too or had been through it before or who didn't treat me like a social pariah and wanted to reach out and still chat. Even the people who still worked at the company who wanted to get together and go to lunch. And that helped me feel a little bit normal again after being so I don't even know. Just listless. I don't know. I felt like I was just this zero
from
gravity.
the outside, that was one of the weirdest things to see because you've always been so driven to an end point and stubborn about it, if I do say so myself.
Yeah.
See that moment where it's pulled out and you don't have a plan, right? And I think that's what happens to all of us, right? We get that rug pulled out and it's like, well, what's the plan? Like,
but wait, hold on. I had a checklist and now I don't. What am I working toward?
It got completely blown up. Yes.
It's so funny too, because I remember after things had not been going super well, we'd been through a few rounds of layoffs. I remember making the decision that I was going to stick around until they kicked me out, whether it was because I got fired or because I got laid off. And I was not prepared when that actually happened.
Like, couldn't be me.
It would never happen to me. No. And yeah, I think it's interesting because I don't think first of all, getting laid off is a unique experience. It's incredibly common, but I also don't feel like that moment of like where is the ground? What is gravity? What's anchoring me down? What's holding me down? Everything I've been working toward, everything I thought I believed in. A lot of these transitions that we go through feel like that, like free fall. And I don't think that's a unique experience. I think everyone has experienced some version of that, like, who am I? What am I doing? And even having done values work and knowing what my values were, it was still really jarring. But I do think that coming out of that, knowing what I wanted, giving myself permission to re-explore that and really redefine what I do want, and letting myself learn new things, try new things, fail at a lot of things. It was, I mean, I really wish I'd taken more time in my unemployment to like really just stuff something up really bad, because I had a little bit of a cushion with some severance and stuff. But I don't know. I do feel like I was able to lean into what I knew mattered most to me and eventually swim up to the surface and find my bearings and point back to where I was supposed to be swimming and move forward.
Yeah. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to adhere to some timeline that,
Yeah.
you know, is either self-imposed or we think is imposed by society. Like I said, like I was saying, well, it's taken me 4 years to get over this thing. Well, it takes what it takes, and allowing yourself to take that breath and, you know, give yourself that grace of like, no, this was a thing and I feel a way and it's going to be okay. And I'm going to take the time that I need to just ride this out, because you will, eventually you do surface and we have a good grasp on what matters most to us. It makes finding up a little bit easier.
Yes, I'm mixing metaphors because we want to be anchored down with our values, but we want to swim to the surface. Anyway, making it complicated.
This is way too much thinking.
Oh, I will beat a metaphor until it is dead.
Till
I will.
It's dead.
I'll do it.
I love it. I love it. We can do an object lesson.
I'm very good at object lesson.
I know.
That's why I do well on LinkedIn. Okay, so let's talk about maybe an experience we do choose, but still left us feeling a little lost. And one that you and I have both experienced is becoming a mom.
Yeah, being a mom. And
I did choose it.
Yes, I also chose it on purpose at the ripe old age of 20.
You were so young.
I had to do math and that was hard. Yeah, I was young. I was pregnant at my undergrad graduation. I was really young.
Gosh. Yeah, I will also say that I did make the choice, and I was 27, so I was
so
much
old.
older. I was definitely by Utah standards. I remember one of my postpartum, my doctor was like, I'd said something about like, physically I'm bouncing back pretty well, and he's like, well, yeah, when you're young, it's not too hard. And I was like, you think I'm young? Because all my friends were on their like fourth kid by the time I had one. Anyway, we can unpack that on another episode. But
it's a different.
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to be a mom. I had been prepared to be a mom. I grew up with a lot of siblings, a lot of nieces and nephews, a lot of cousins and people, you know, like I felt like I was pretty well equipped to be a mom, and I was still absolutely shook at how terribly prepared I was to become a parent. Man,
Yeah. No one, I mean, there is no baby book. There is no advice from the wisest person who's had 8 babies. Like there's actually not a way to prepare for that moment when you become a parent. And I think because it's so different for everybody else, we feel those tugs and hot spots in different places based on our life experience. And so, man, yeah, it's talk about feeling like the rug has been pulled out from under you, and you're drowning and you're floating and you don't know where you are and your body is leaking everywhere.
Everywhere. And I felt, again, so lonely. Like it was just so hard to explain what was going on. And even though I knew there were millions of women who had gone through this and knew this experience and had these things, like it still felt like I'm the only one. I'm the only one going through this. I'm the only one who feels this way. I'm the only one, like, I don't know. It was just, I don't know, man. It was weird. I did not enjoy it.
It was weird.
Postpartum was a trip.
Oh man, well.
And then I was starting to feel like myself again. And I was like, it'll be fun. What if I started over? Did it again.
Yeah, I think we have that in common. My kids aren't as far apart as yours, but far enough that I forgot.
No, but close. Yeah. But see, here's the thing. And I think why my kids are so far apart is I didn't. And everyone told me that I would. They'd be like, you'll forget how hard it was and you'll just want to squish a little baby again. I did not. I did not want to do it again.
Well, I'm really glad you did.
I did. I am too. I'm so glad.
He's personal,
so perfect.
selfish reasons.
He's so wonderful. I also did go through a global pandemic and get a master's degree in between the 2 children. So I feel like there's some good excuses there, and that I did ultimately want another child. I want to be very clear that I did want Graham. I'm so glad he's here. He's so wonderful. But it did take me a long time to get there because it was hard. It was hard.
It is. It is. Was there a difference, you think, between the first and second one because you had had all this life experience to feel less unmoored when our perfect
I
little boy was
would
born?
love to say yes. I was so smart and I was very good at communicating my needs and I was very capable of doing all of those things. I was not. No, I mean there was definitely a difference. I was able to clock a few things a little sooner. And I knew some language that I didn't know with my first one that I was able to like tie things to, like, oh, this is probably related to anxiety, or like even just like the technical terms, like the actual names of things. And so I could like, oh, this is what this thing is. Now I know what to do about it. I could navigate some of those a little better. It was harder in a lot of ways because Nate had 6 weeks off, 6 weeks paid leave with Eleanor, and he didn't get any for Graham. And so that was probably the hardest difference is with Eleanor. I really felt like I had a teammate. That those 6 weeks we were in the weeds together. And with Graham, and not that he wasn't in the weeds with me, but it was very different not having that time. So, hey, give dudes paid leave too.
Seriously. Like they're having a baby and they're also dealing with this huge shift in their identity. It's not like they're not just because they didn't push out
And
the
in their
baby.
relation.
I think too, the second one is a lot harder because you already have the first one and they don't go away when you have a baby.
They don't,
still
but
need
she did
all
go
the
to
things.
kindergarten. So I was able to chip her off.
That's nice. That's nice. I was really able to get rid of her every day for a while.
It helped. It helped.
It's not nothing. It's not nothing. Oh my gosh. Well, it's been interesting going through the transitions because my kids are pretty much adults now. It's such a different game in parenting. Their needs are so different as they get older. It's less about meeting their physical needs of eating and getting dressed and Kara's favorite, giving them a bath. Though there is also always a phase of getting them to bathe when you can no longer physically do it yourself.
You have to get a little more creative of how you bribe them.
There's bribing and a little bit of pro-social shame that has to happen. But it's also a really exciting time to be, I don't know, more of your human self and less of your parent self, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like as the kids get older, I'm taking off the mom jacket a little bit more and showing them who I am, not as their mom. And it's cool. It's cool, but it's also, there's a lot of navigation around, well, is that really appropriate? Like, I have a hard line in the sand. I don't play Cards Against Humanity with my kids because I don't want to know what they know.
Because you're still their parent. You're not their friend, but like you are friends, but you're their parent.
Yeah, it's weird. It is weird. But
I feel like I'm experiencing that a little bit with an 8-year-old. Like,
yeah,
she's like my buddy
it happens
now.
Yeah, the older they get, the more that relationship shifts because they need different things from you. And feeling like you are confident in yourself and what you value and your identity outside of being their mom means more the older they get. And because a lot of people feel threatened by their kids' independence, which is weird to me because I'm like, please move out and be a grown-up. But I know it happens. But it's also a good opportunity to live your values and let your kids see you living those values. Yeah. And being an example of what it means to live in your values, which has been really cool for me with my kids right now, because they are also seeing the difference between my values and their dad's values, which is really interesting to watch.
I think about that a lot. And I've talked about this on this podcast before, but something that became even more important to me as I became a mom, and probably, I mean, it's not because of seeing you and Elise raise kids while I was in some formative years myself, is knowing how important it is to be a whole person as a mom outside of or I don't want to say outside of being a mom, but as part of being a mom is also being a whole person yourself. And how important it is for me to model that for my kids, especially my daughter, because I've seen so many moms become a mom. And I love seeing my friends and people become moms and like get to fulfill those goals and, you know, things that they wanted for themselves. And I've seen them lose a lot of who they were before they were moms. And I don't ever want my kids to feel like that's the choice that they have to make if they do choose to have children.
Yeah. And not even just in that shift to becoming a mother. You see that a lot in people who get into relationships with people. If they don't have a strong sense of self and their values, then they can get swallowed up in that relationship and start to lose themselves.
Yes. I can't help but pull it back to Parks and Rec. But do you remember the episode where Anne has to start dating herself because she realizes how much she gets absorbed in her relationships.
Yes.
And she goes through and purges, and she has like the flannels from her grunge era when she was
Yes.
dating that
Yes.
a cowboy hat from when she was like
It's
all the
so-
running clothes from when she was dating Chris the first time, and how much different her relationship is with Chris the second time. Because anyway, date
Yep.
yourselves.
Date yourselves. Not to say, yeah. Anyway, well, that's a whole rabbit hole that I'm not going to go down, because I don't know that I should be saying anything about long-term relationships at this point in my life.
No, we can unpack that in another episode.
We can go through my Tinder and I can show you all the nightmares.
Yeah, I'm good. But anyway, I think what I'm noticing from what we're talking about with these transitions is that having your values clear and knowing what matters to you isn't necessary. I don't want to say it's going to make things easier. Like all of these things were still really hard, but my values were what got me pointed in the right direction and kept me true to that. And that's what I wish I could give to more people, is some way to just get reoriented once after they've spun you around 100 times. How do you pin the tail on the donkey? Well, your values are going to be your little bumper. Sorry, how many metaphors can I mix into this? But it's like your bumpers, right? While you're bowling, they can be like, okay, let's close in on where we're trying to land here, and it can help you get where you're trying to go. And yeah, I want that. I want to give more people that.
Yeah, we talk about it a lot. And I meet a lot of people in my life that I'm like, hey, did you know that we have a workbook about finding your values? Because you really need to do this exercise.
I have a couple, and I give them away sometimes, or I'm like, I really think you need this. I have some just here, ready. If you want one.
Well, and obviously we feel super passionate about it. That's the whole first season of this podcast is about values and why you would want to know your values and how to go about doing it, because none of us exist in a vacuum, and we carry a lot of things with us from our past and from society around us. And we may not value the things that we think we're supposed to value, which is gross and weird. Hard. So we all just need to do it for ourselves and figure out what that looks like.
Yep. So yeah, our first season is really great. We do have a workbook, and now we have a course. So if you're really like, I want to know how to do this and how to figure this out, we have some resources for you. So
yeah, definitely check them out. It really is. It sounds really corny, but it really is this labor of love that we have put into this, because it is a really weird, I realize, topic. And people are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, no, but do it, because it's important.
Just you won't leave me okay.
It. Just do it. Just do it. Do it.
Yes, and then tell us about it.
Yes, that piece too. I like that part. Cool. Well, I think we covered everything.
I think that's everything. Go forth, figure it out, and tell us how it goes.
Yep. Do it. Do it.
Do it and you're cool. Do it and you're cool.